welcome to Science Frontiers, a space for discussions on frontier areas of science and technology. I am your host, Vinay Panda. With the recent release of the Foresight paper on synthetic biology, or the paper on the policy and research planning for synthetic biology by the Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, the field has gained attention once again. Although not known with the same name, synthetic biology, the field roots can be traced back to 1961. Almost 60 years back, with the landmark paper by the French Nobel Prize winning scientist François Jacob and Jacques Monod. They worked on the mechanisms of cellular metabolism, growth, and differentiation. Since then, the field has gained tremendous importance, especially since the year 2000, when two landmark publications appeared back to back on the toggle suites and the repressolator of the bacterium E. coli. This is exactly the time when the momentum was built that was necessary to give a push to the field for what we know as synthetic biology. Today, we shall discuss with one of the principal investigators of the project who prepared the Foresight paper, Pawan Dhar. Pawan is a professor at the School of Biotechnology, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Without spending much time, let's get into the detail. Pawan, thank you very much for joining us. Before we get into the details, for our audience who are not well versed with the technology and science, can you please describe what is synthetic biology and how did it all start?
Thank you, Vinay. Thank you very much for starting this new series and at an appropriate time when people need to understand the origin and evolution of synthetic biology, because the way it has been conceived when the field was launched and the way it has evolved after that, we see a lot of variation, and that's good for the field. But at the same time, it's important for viewers to know what was the origin of synthetic biology from the philosophical point of view. And then we will also come to the other practical aspects. So coming back to the question that you asked, synthetic biology is the science of construction of biological systems. When I say construction, it's important for people to understand that there are three ways to do science. One is what we call as a reductionism, which means that you take an organism and you go into the deeper layers of information, starting with the external phenotype. That was Gregor Mendel did. But in order to understand how the organism functions, you uncover deeper layers. And the first layer that you find is what you call as gross anatomy. From there, you go to histology, then cell biology, molecular biology, biochemistry, and then, of course, it's chemistry, end of the day, and physics, if you go to that level of reductionism. So that's one way of doing biology. The second is when you have a lot of data, what do you do with that? Because logically, you have been able to find the construction of the living organisms. Now you have a lot of data. So then you integrate the data, then comes the role of databases. Then you merge the data, you build the virtual models of the components of their interaction of the pathways, cells, and organisms. Now that's another way of doing biology. First is reductionism, and second is integration. The third approach is what scientists at MIT proposed along with the other colleagues in the US back in June 2004, when they asked, is it possible to construct a biological system? Can I construct a cell starting from genome? Now, this science of construction is what we call as synthetic biology.
Thank you very much, Pawan. Now, there is a lot of confusion because there are multiple terms which have been thrown around. Synthetic biology, genetic engineering, metabolic engineering, biological engineering. What are the differences, if at all there are any? And what is the authentic term that people use for the construction that you just mentioned?
Thank you, Vinay. I think that's very important because even now, if you ask people what is synthetic biology, you might get different views depending on if they are coming from chemistry or they're coming from biology or they're coming from purely engineering. So when the term synthetic biology was proposed, and popularized, and the field was launched back in June 2004 at MIT. This was the first synthetic biology meeting. I remember it was a 3-day conference. In the last day, last session, Drew Andy asked people in the audience that, would you like to propose a new name? If you're not comfortable with synthetic biology, would you like to propose a new name to this field? So that started people thinking about, is this the right name, or could there be a better name? And following this, there were many discussions, and people did not like the term synthetic biology initially. So they said, let's call it, let's say biological technology, because it is engineering, and engineering is leading to technology. Then the question was, what is biotechnology? So somebody said, let's call it constructive biology. Well, if this is constructive biology, is rest of the biology destructive? So this is also, not accepted. And like that, a discussion went on for actually several years. And there was a paper specially written on what is synthetic biology. So finally, the community felt that because it was engineering of the biological systems, and when I say systems, the abstraction goes like this, that you start from the part, then you have a device layer, and then you have the circuit layer that is within the cell. So when you are trying to engineer all the three, a generic term is needed, which will take care of all the three terms. And then biological engineering was proposed and accepted, and it was very popularly accepted among people, practitioners of the field. However, people are also, when you look at the publications, they're also renaming metabolic engineering work as synthetic biology. I feel there's a need to build an exclusion criteria, and there is of course an overlap currently, but there is a need, and that's why when you talk of the these policy documents, and also when you say whether you are doing synthetic biology or not doing synthetic biology, you need to have a clear and crisp definition. Only then somebody can say whether you are into this field or are you doing something else.
Absolutely.
So metabolic, right?
Sorry.
So metabolic engineering, for that matter, was mostly related to a change of the flux, controlling the flux in the cell, and using a lot of permutation and combination. But here, you don't see that approach of permutation combination.
Right. So with that clarification, I think it's the right time to talk about the controversies that are linked to the field. In fact, as you know, with the euphoria comes the controversy, and synthetic biology has its fair share. There are a lot of discussions I remember in the last 1 decade when, rightly and wrongly, some people associated a really danger with synthetic biology. In fact, there are a lot of people who are associated with synthetic biology and creating life. And there was a thought process among certain people as if scientists are playing God. So do you want to comment about why there was a controversy to start with, and was it actually called for?
Yes. So that's very interesting aspect, Vinay. Thank you for raising this. It's a very important aspect of synthetic biology. I recollect in the first and the follow-up meetings, there was a discussion, focused discussion on the biosafety and biosecurity aspects. Now, why is that so? You see, again, I go back to these three terms: reductionism, integration, and construction. When you're assuming the role of an engineer who is supposed to construct things, that means you're basically saying that I can design a variety of things. And because you're not understanding the natural systems, you're not integrating the natural information, you're creating a brand new information. When you're creating a brand new information, either you assemble the natural parts into natural components, and that's one way of doing engineering, or you can synthesize or create and design brand new parts. at the level of genes, RNA, proteins, and so on, create new combinations of protein, peptide, genes, and RNA. And that cocktail you can create on your own, which was not necessarily designed by nature. So when you have the power of creating your own designs, people have this fear that maybe you can also create a virus, you can create a harmful microbe. So this fear is not misplaced, but it's important not to panic, because panic is based on emotions, and here we are talking of science. So I feel personally that I don't see any possibility of a major threat. Yes, the technology has advanced to a great extent, but at the same time, we are governed by a regulatory system. And if you have to design a brand new microbe with harmful, outcomes, it's not going to be trivial.
Absolutely. I think that's very well said. And now let's change gear a little bit and talk about the dissemination of the results of the scientific data from the field of synthetic biology. And the reason I ask this is you are one of the persons who started, again, one of the first journals in the field of synthetic biology back when you were in Singapore. I just want to know how the journal doing, and tell us a little bit about the journey towards publications of results, scientific results from synthetic biology.
Thank you, Vinay. Yeah, this takes me back to, again, the first meeting at MIT. I had an opportunity to meet Ron Weiss, who was at Princeton at that time, and then later on he moved to MIT. So I asked Ron, now that the field has been launched, and there's a lot of excitement, a lot of media coverage, and there is no journal. So how about we launch a journal and give a space for people to publish their work? So then we approached Biomed Central and for a short while, but then we moved on to Springer later on and launched a journal called Systems and Synthetic Biology. So it went on quite well because there was a good response from the community, and people were sensitized to the fact that there is a place where they can park the synthetic biology work. So it went on quite well for many years, but within few years, other established journals also started synthetic biology sections. And then there were more people coming up with the synthetic biology journals, dedicated journals. And we found that the community is small and it's like a niche area. So it was difficult to attract publications to the same extent with which we were able to publish in the initial few years. So then we realized that there's a good momentum which has been generated already in the community. People are sensitized, so it's time to close it down and allow people to use other platforms.
Thank you very much, Pawan. And I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today's edition, but we promise the audience to come back again. And this is the first episode in a series that we are making on synthetic biology, where we are going to talk about the science, the technology, the innovation, the entrepreneurship, the job creation, and where we see the field go and how policy matters in synthetic biology are going to be shaped or are getting shaped all around the world, including our own country. Thank you once again for listening to us or watching us wherever you are, and we promise to come back very soon. Thank you very much, Pawan. See you soon.
Thank you very much, Vinay, and I look forward to more interactions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.